Phineas and Ferb is back with brand new episodes in the Lord's year 2025. Jeremy's been recast, the animation has proven controversial, and the screaming goat meme has played 4 times. There's much to discuss.
The Phineas and Ferb Show! We can squeeze 20 years of entertainment out of this one videotape!
Recently, there's been plenty of conversation as to whether a 5th season was really needed. We already had over 200 stories. It wasn't a show with obvious lingering cliffhangers or unfinished business. In fact, by the end of its 4th season, Phineas and Ferb was showing signs of decline. The jokes were duller, the innators and the inventions were less interesting, and there was a general sense that the show was running out of steam and ideas. I think the show ended at about the perfect time back in 2015, and if it kept going with a 5th season back then, I think it would have tainted the overall legacy a lot. We also never really got a chance to miss these characters. The entire Phineas and Ferb ensemble showed up in Dan and Swampy's next series, Milo Murphy's Law, with Doofenshmirtz even joining the main cast in season 2.
Alright, that's the last time I go to a rave on a school night.
Before Milo Murphy's Law came to its unceremonious end, a revival movie was announced called Candace Against the Universe, which debuted on Disney Plus in 2020. And believe it or not, Candace Against the Universe to now is actually the longest we've ever gone without seeing these characters. Phineas and Ferb's 5th and 6th seasons were announced on January 13th, 2023, 2.5 years before they started airing. And this was an early announcement. Swampy hadn't even signed on yet when they announced this. He's like one of the 2 guys. This would be like if Phineas was confirmed to return but not Ferb. Luckily, Swampy did sign on before long. Since this announcement, Dan's TikToks have detailed the show's production. They started writing stuff from the first episode 8 months after the announcement. The actors didn't start recording dialogue until 9 months after the announcement. Typically, productions are in development for a year or 2 before they're revealed. But a pretty clear picture was painted here that Disney announced this as soon as Dan Povenmire signed his contract, which would be like sending out invites to your baby shower 30 seconds after having sex. Phineas and Ferb was my all-time favorite show as a kid, and given the video that jump-started this channel was analyzing the pitfalls of Milo Murphy's Law, I've had a vested interest in this revival. While I didn't feel like I needed a new season, I was open to it so long as it offered new, creative, and fresh ideas, not just dull retreads of stuff that came before. In addition, the original show had 3 unresolved story components that I was hopeful season 5 could finally give closure on. Stacy learning about Perry's identity, Vanessa and Monty's secret relationship, and the long-awaited Meap Me in St. Louis, the 3rd installment of the Chronicles of Meap saga. I was always fine with having never gotten these, but if the show was destined to return, then I figured it was time for closure. Watching a new season of Phineas and Ferb in one sitting at 1 a.m. was an unparalleled fever dream of an experience. And as I watched, I was curious to find out, does this revival justify its own existence? Does it give attention to these dropped storylines? Does it have new ideas to explore? Or is it a cash grab full of recasts and wonky animation? Let's find out through a conveniently numbered list. Part 1. 104 Reasons Why. The 5th season's opener is called Summer Blockbuster, and from the opening frame, the literal first second, the continuity has been broken, but we'll get to that momentarily. We open the very next summer, as class ends on the last day of school and everyone sings the Temu version of What Time Is It? From here, it seems like an aggressively paint-by-numbers Phineas and Ferb episode, as the boys build a ton of inventions to help their mom with the block party, while Candace tries to bust them. Meanwhile, Perry is assigned to stop Doofenshmirtz after he's turned back to evil, and built a vaporizer-inator. At this point in episode 1, I wasn't super enthused. It seemed like it was going through the motions, almost to a degree that was confusing in how predictable it was.
Nothing could possibly take away all 5 of these things at once.
It's even got an attachment to shoot 5 things at once.
And then we get to the clip which was spreading everywhere. Mom getting eviscerated. Immediately, every creative decision made complete sense and clicked into place. I've never before experienced a moment where I retracted every doubt within 1 second. This entire episode is very strategically lulling you, the viewer, into a sense of complacency, just to pull the rug out from under you, and is entertaining as hell.
That's not what happens! Your stuff disappears, not Mom! Your stuff!
Going into the season, there was discourse about Doofenshmirtz returning to evil after his character arc in the original series finale, where he tried to turn a new leaf. People were especially off-put after Doofenshmirtz's starring role in Milo Murphy's Law, which followed him trying to be a good guy when he learned he was destined to become the heroic inventor of time travel, Professor Time. This whole storyline doesn't get addressed in the revival whatsoever.
Good morning, Agent P. I know you've been on venomous insectoid robot duty for the last 9 months.
Monogram says Perry has been fighting robot insects for 9 months, which creates this curious rectangle square type dichotomy where Phineas and Ferb is canon to Milo Murphy's Law, but Milo Murphy's Law is not canon to Phineas and Ferb. More to the point, I fully expected this to happen because Dan's been on record saying Doofenshmirtz is prone to relapsing, which is how the post-summer holiday specials fit into the timeline.
It's that first summer, he goes good at the end of it, becomes a science teacher for a couple weeks, maybe a month, gets fired for some horrible thing that happens there, goes and works at Alka. That doesn't work out. He becomes evil again by Christmas. And maybe that next summer, so if we ever want to do another, like Phineas and Ferb the next summer, then he gives that up again and decides to create time travel.
And personally, I think the right decision was made. I wholeheartedly and genuinely believe that Doofenshmirtz needs to be evil for Phineas and Ferb to function. Years back, Brian Koch? I could ask him, but I think it's funnier not knowing how to pronounce his name. He made a video detailing that the narrative thrust of Phineas and Ferb are Candace and Doofenshmirtz, and the original finale was a symbolic exploration of this idea. In recent years, Dan's come out and said that as well, that stories are about characters overcoming obstacles, but Phineas and Ferb don't have obstacles to overcome. They just make a thing and have fun and is the least important of the 3 prongs of the story.
What Phineas and Ferb are doing is not the A story. It's not even really a story. It is just the setting. And what Doofenshmirtz is doing, or what Candace is doing, that's the story.
Phineas and Ferb episodes follow the same story structure. The boys make an invention, Doof makes an innator, and Candace tries to show Mom. The innator makes the invention disappear moments before Mom sees it. I've always thought of Phineas and Ferb a lot like writing a Mad Lib. The boys build a rideshare service. Doofenshmirtz builds an Icarus-inator. Moments before Mom sees it, the Icarus-inator causes all of the Ubers to fly away into the sun. For this reason, the quality and memorability of Phineas and Ferb episodes is usually dependent on the punchiness of the jokes, the creativity of the ideas, and the absurdity of how the storylines intersect. Think about how Doofenshmirtz being good would throw all of this off balance. First off, Doofenshmirtz's evil inventions usually have destructive capability. They're designed to take things away, turn City Hall into juice, de-evolve the human race, steal the Danville Opera House. If he's making positive devices intended for good, that makes it harder to justify the innators taking away the inventions. The reason Perry and Doofenshmirtz's subplot is often cited as being more compelling than the rest of the show is because they're in such active conflict with each other. If Doofenshmirtz is good, why would Perry go to his building every day? Just to hang out? Would he still get a mission brief from Monogram? If Doofenshmirtz and Perry are just making inventions for good, then their storyline is functionally identical to Phineas and Ferb's storyline. If 2/3 of the subplots don't have any conflict or drama, it would completely destabilize the delicate story engine, and the show would be vastly, vastly less compelling. In fact, in Milo Murphy's Law, we saw Doofenshmirtz try to be good and mess everything up for the protagonists, time and time again, and it was already getting old after only a few episodes of it. So imagine that happening in every Phineas and Ferb episode. This would be like a Phineas and Ferb season where Candace doesn't try to bust her brothers at all. So I know this is a surprising take for me because I'm usually a strong proponent of character development sticking, but the show would not work if Doofenshmirtz were a good guy, and I think that the creative team made the exact right decision to undo that character arc if they have to bring the show back. But first, let's circle back around. This is a doozy of an opening shot. Phineas and Ferb are in middle school, despite the fact that there was an episode set on the first day of school at the end of the last series, which clearly showed them in elementary school. For almost the entire original series, Phineas and Ferb didn't have any given age, until 2 of the very final episodes from the final 6 months, which both showed them in elementary school and gave us a 10-year time skip into the future where all the kids were 18, firmly cementing them as having been 8 years old during the original summer. Evidently, this detail was forgotten, Either that, or their entire friend group, including Buford, are so intelligent that they skipped multiple grades during the course of one school year. The way the scale is broken now is really funny to think about. Look at the height difference in Milo Murphy's Law. Apparently this means Milo's middle school is full of really tall kids, while Phineas and Ferb's middle school is full of really short kids, implying Danville's school district may be zoned by height rather than neighborhood. The second part of the special is called Cloudy with a Chance of Mom, in which a vapor cloud of Linda has formed and the boys have to restore her to normal.
Does that cloud kind of look like your mom?
Ooh, sick burn.
This feels like a really classic special, and honestly, it's one of the better specials, as the boys are extremely desperate to save Linda, while Doofenshmirtz creates a cooler offinator to turn him into a freak storm for TPD evil purposes. Phineas assigns everyone a task to save the day except for Candace.
Wait! What can I do?
And I like to imagine that he just still doesn't trust her not to screw things up after the Marvel crossover. There's a moment where Candace clumsily makes the mom cloud float away, and I like how Phineas is barely upset at her for potentially killing their mother forever. Meanwhile, he flipped his lid at her when she gave the Hulk superpowers to Baljeet.
You have to go, now.
The entire back half of the story is cinematic, full of absolutely beautiful shots and gorgeous animation on par with the best of the show, complete with a rendition of the Candace Against the Universe theme.
You wanted us all to be together as a family for the first day of summer. Your favorite memory.
It's crazy that they didn't use any of this in the marketing, and instead used a bunch of really awkward looking shots to convince people to see the show. And believe me, I will meticulously analyze this season's animation by the time we're done here today. Thanks to an unseen save from Perry, and after rainwater washes away the inventions, the boys are able to restore Linda to normal, and she conveniently has no memory of what happened. Then everyone sings a song, the end. Right out of the gate, this truly feels like the same show, as pretty much everyone has said by now. The tone is consistent, every niche recurring gag is remembered, the nuance of every little character relationship is back without missing a beat. The show uses all of the same music cues in the exact same context, which is a really big factor in how authentic this feels. It's readily apparent that the same core creative team is at the helm as were there before. On my channel, I've criticized a lot about Milo Murphy's Law and to a lesser extent Candace Against the Universe. Passive characters, forgettable music, annoying comedy. Well, here's what's crazy. To my beyond pleasant surprise, every aspect that irked me is gone in season 5. Surgically excised like a tumor with expert precision and 100% accuracy. Like, it's unbelievable. There is no more long, drawn-out jokes where the entire joke is that the joke is taking too long. There's no more Doofenshmirtz droning on for minutes at a time with random observations. Everything feels sharp and punchy again, with a lot of younger writers bringing new energy to the table. I think it really shows. So many clips from this season have been going viral online, and that's because the comedy is really hitting on all cylinders. Almost every other song in Milo Murphy's Law were solo written by just Dan, and over half were sung by the very similar sounding Danny Jacob and Aaron Jacob. The end result being a feeling of sameness as every song blurred together.
Pretty as sunflower, skating and dancing, dark world.
Despite the series' leads being Weird Al Yankovic and Sabrina Carpenter, the songs were never sung by the characters. Weird Al sang 3 out of 65, Mackay Curtis sang 0, and Sabrina Carpenter sang 0, a fact which seems more absurd with each passing day. Thus, these songs were never personal expressions of what the characters were feeling, rather a more forgettable, objective description of the events unfolding on screen. But here in season 5, there's a way wider variety of songwriters, vocalists, instrumentations, genres, and all 7 of the main singing characters, as I'll call them, have already sung multiple songs each across 10 or 20 episodes, depending on how you count. As a result, this season has some certified suburb classics that genuinely stack up as some of the best songs in the franchise. This isn't what happened, but it genuinely feels like every criticism I leveled was meticulously acknowledged and absolved like a checklist. It blows my mind. However, new issues have arisen. I can only describe it like the classic trope of thinking you've plugged a leak, only for more water to shoot back in your face. I realized while watching this episode that Doofenshmirtz's Vaporizerinator felt very, very familiar.
Behold, the Vaporizerinator! It's my ultimate inator! The Vaporizerinator!
This series premiere marks the very first time that Doofenshmirtz has 2 inators with the same name. which is very emblematic of this season as a whole. Part 2. Whoa, deja vu-ish. Almost every episode has echoes of past ideas the show's already done, if not outright repeats. We've seen Linda ask the boys to help with a block party before in Love at First Bite. We've seen the boys make self-throwing darts before in Bullseye. We've seen them make a giant bounce house before in Meatloaf Surprise. We've seen Doofenshmirtz systematically eliminate a list of things that annoy him before in Mom's Birthday. The next pair of episodes are called License to Bust and Submarine Sandwich Submarine. A lot of beats feel familiar as well. We've already had an episode where Doofenshmirtz took a driving test, the Dingleberry Imperative. Now we see Candace take a driving test. The boys' gecko gear, which lets them bounce around town, is functionally the exact same as their rubberization ray from Night of the Living Pharmacists. We've already seen an episode where Candace is trying to bust the boys in the car, taking Linda to this exact park. Wow, we've never seen Candace stow away on a submarine before.
It's an actual submarine sandwich submarine. I can't believe we hadn't thought of it sooner.
Except they have thought of that joke before.
See, it's a submarine!
So, in Atlantis Arise from season 2, Candace and Mom competed in a sandcastle competition. This happens again in Submarine Sandwich Submarine. And it's okay in one sense because that was established as an annual competition. We saw it last summer, we're seeing it this summer, sure. But it ends in the exact same way, with Phineas and Ferb's invention getting mistaken for Candace's sandcastle and her winning the competition. Except Jeremy's not judging it this year because the show is avoiding his character like the plague, which we'll discuss rather soon. Also, I just have to stop and mention that this episode about Phineas and Ferb going to the Mariana Trench in the submarine was in development at the time OceanGate happened.
The Mariana Trench!
Mariana Trench!
They had ample opportunity to remove the Mariana Trench name drop, but they didn't. And I think there is a true non-zero chance that this episode was inspired by that submarine implosion, and it was an intentional choice to keep those references in.
Is the Mariana Trench supposed to have two gross bloodshot eyes?
No. Why do you ask?
That's why.
All this to say, one of my biggest concerns from the initial marketing was how many concepts felt very familiar. All throughout the season, the Ice Lug feels like a combination of Foam Town and the Rolling Water Ball. The rocket-powered Lacrosse Country is a pretty identical setup to the boys building international rockets in Save Summer. The Turn-Overinator? It's giving the 90-degree Turninator.
You know, it turns things, but only 90 degrees at a time. I'm gonna rotate the city 90 degrees.
It also results in the invention rolling away in an identical manner to when the Tiltonator hit the boys' maze. Except that time they bothered to animate it. But let's take ourselves back to the original show's 4th season, which clearly felt like the creative team was smashing their heads against a wall to come up with interesting things for Phineas and Ferb to do. All of the simplistic, high-concept ideas were burnt through in season 1. I know what we're gonna do today! We're gonna make a roller coaster! We're gonna make a circus! We're gonna make a haunted house! By season 4, we were left with abstract leftovers. We're gonna put on a giant marionette puppet show! We're gonna make the world's safest dental hygiene-inspired theme park! We're gonna tie the Gordian knot from Greek mythology and then promptly untie it again!
What do you think? The world's largest art piece made entirely of takeout food packets and utensils.
The original show seemed very conscious that it didn't repeat itself. And as a result, every invention kind of got lamer and lamer, since they didn't want to repeat the coolest ones they did in the beginning. There was a season 4 episode where they fly kites in the park, and there was no self-aware joke like Baljeet going, huh? That's all we're doing? No, they just play it straight, like it's yet another super cool Phineas and Ferb invention.
Watch this! I'm jumping clouds!
That's awesome, Isabella!
The 5th season, clearly, is easing up on its convictions to never be repetitive. But I think they're making an effort to mix and match old ideas to often better results. In the original show, Phineas and Ferb built a western town in their backyard in the episode She's the Mayor. The entire subplot was less than 2 minutes of screen time, the main joke being it was extraordinarily miserable to build.
We should be proud.
Let's never do that again.
This year, in season 5, we get the forced perspective western town. Baljeet doesn't like westerns, so they build this town to change his perspective. We get a progressively more ludicrous sequence of forced perspective visual gags, until they eventually go off the rails to not make any logical sense whatsoever, much to Candace's frustration. This culminates in Mom coming into the backyard with the revelation that the entire town was incredibly small the entire time.
That's not how forced perspective works!
It's funny, and I think this was a huge improvement over the original iteration of the western town. So would I rather see something like this, or flying kites? I would say this. Even if it's something the boys have already built, They're bringing something new to it. I think this 5th season is actually in a better place than the original show was by the end of season 4. And strangely, the fact that they're allowing themselves to dip their toes back into their old pool of ideas is a reason for that. But don't get the wrong idea though. This season has so many completely new concepts and ideas that it's eager to explore. Part 3, the creative new ideas-inator. Things like taking Perry to the vet to get chipped, which would threaten to ruin his operation. Or an episode where Perry doesn't get trapped by Doofenshmirtz, but by his redneck cousin Bubba. I think this is only the 2nd episode where Doofenshmirtz doesn't appear at all. Also, they missed their opportunity to call this a swampy marsh. Like, I know the show already made that joke a few times, but they made that joke a few times with conviction. Do it again. There's new Candace ideas, like her trying reverse psychology or psychosis to get her mom in the backyard. Or even completely missing the invention altogether because she has AirPods in.
Squidward, the truck's coming! Oh my god, he has headphones on! He can't hear us! Oh my god, Squidward, move!
There's a story where Phineas and Ferb build a giant zoetrope, which ends up rolling away 2 minutes into the episode. Then we spend the entire story following a zoetrope as it rolls around town. An idea that was apparently actually proposed for season 4, but rejected by the executives. And I can see why from their perspective, because this is so out there, but I'm glad it finally happened. And a friend I watched it with actually said it was their favorite of the entire season. I should probably mention at this point that I've seen every episode in this batch 4 to 5 times each, with friends, alone, on calls. I didn't plan for that to happen. People just kept wanting to watch Phineas and Ferb with me. The best episodes of the show were always the ones that broke up the formula. You need an ebb and flow of generic episodes and subversive episodes to make the subversive episodes mean something. In season 5, it feels like every other episode is doing something super unusual and fresh. Like, it's almost too many, but I'm not gonna complain because I'm having so much fun with it, and they're just good, funny ideas. For instance, Dry Another Day is just the most generic Phineas and Ferb story to ever exist, with nothing remarkable about it, but nothing wrong with it. Then it's paired with Deconstructing Doof, an entire episode where Doofenshmirtz and Candace have the same therapist, who slowly realizes that their experiences are connected and goes insane because he thinks the world's gaslighting him. We get A Chip to the Vet, with classic Phineas and Ferb, Doof, Perry, and Candace storylines. Then we get More Than an Intern, where we follow Carl the entire time while the episode happens around him, akin to Delivery of Destiny in season 3. Here, Carl has to work multiple jobs since Alka doesn't pay him. It culminates in him having a crash out to Major Monogram.
I've told you 3 times now, those are my part-time jobs. I'm an unpaid intern. How do you think I afford to pay rent?
There's fresh blood in the writer's room this year, and as a result, this is the most millennial-coded season of television ever produced.
We've learned that Doofenshmirtz may be in therapy. And if so, we fully support him and hope he gets the help he needs.
I told you this meeting could just be an email.
You could just be an email, Carl.
Also, we've seen Major Monogram's house before, and in fact, Carl's been there, but I guess Major Monogram moved into a condo. My headcanon is that his wife kicked him out, and he's about to become divorced like Doofenshmirtz. They could bond over their divorce! That'd be so cute! Also, Carl says this.
I'm being promoted to paid intern?
No!
But he was already promoted to paid intern in the Where's Perry 2-parter, and that was a memorable joke, too.
I am officially promoting you to the title of paid intern. You understand we won't actually be paying you. It's just a title.
More examples. There's an entire episode where the Fireside Girls break into a civil war over what cupcake flavor to bake. And I was so engaged because I hadn't even considered that something like that could be in bounds for these characters. It was so fun.
Son of a catch! That's it!
It made me realize the show should go even further into having fun with these characters. You've had this block of 6 interchangeable blank slates, and I think Ginger is the only one with individual defining characteristics in it, and that she's Stacy's sister and she has a crush on Baljeet. She had one episode that was kind of about her. Why can't they flesh out the rest of the team? You have Diamond White and Madison Pettis, and they only have like 1 line per year. It's crazy. That's Moon Girl and Corey and the House Girl, or Leo's girlfriend from Lab Rats. Both of these actresses can sing, and yet their characters have completely different singing voices in the episodes themselves. Give us an episode where Holly's parents want to pull her from the Fireside Girls for some reason, and the other girls have to campaign for her to stay. I know that's a weird Phineas and Ferb premise, but so is this. I'm realizing that 5 seasons in, these could become fleshed out characters if the writers wanted them to be. And it could be cool if they were, especially if they become able to stand on their own as characters and add some interesting wrinkles to the show's dynamic. Imagine like season 7, there's an episode where just Addison comes to the backyard. And by this point, Addison's a fun character and we know her personality. If this show's gonna go on for a while, I think they should do stuff like that. Okay, update. I wrote and edited that weeks ago before the original video was taken down. This is a re-upload. Today, July 19th, 2025, the episode Book Flub aired. It's an Addison episode. Isabella's not in it. The other Fireside Girls aren't in it. Addison didn't really do much, but what are the odds? That's literally exactly what I just said. Further proof that I've never had a bad idea in my life. The show is more than willing to break its own continuity, I've noticed, but it's in a way that makes sense. The episode No Slumber Party, for example, establishes Baljeet cannot stay up past his bedtime, which is a running gag through the story.
I would have you know that
Obviously, we've seen him up at night before in the multiple other Slumber Party themed episodes. In Out of Character, Baljeet can only think literally and is completely unable to suspend his disbelief.
I can see these vines are just painted ropes. How can I act with this?
The cast has to teach him to embrace the fantastical, and obviously, we've seen him suspend his disbelief before.
Those readings make no sense.
That's a pencil sharpener.
How is that information helpful at this juncture?
But here's the thing, when you're telling 300 distinct stories with the same cast of characters, you have to be flexible and willing to mix things up to avoid being repetitive. The show's always done this. In the season 3 episode Monsters from the Id, Baljeet has a horrifying fear of contractions. Words with apostrophes in the middle, a fear that he clearly never had before, but that the series in season 5 even remembers occasionally.
Some more.
No.
Being an early sleeper, being literal, and fearing improper grammar clearly fit the broad strokes of Baljeet's characterization. And these characters get to be malleable because it's not like these are complex or grounded people anyway. Here's one of my favorite examples of a conscious change made by the season. In the original series, Isabella was always the girl from across the street, while Baljeet was shown elsewhere in the neighborhood, and Buford was explicitly said to be 5 blocks away, which was a whole plot point in Summer Belongs to You when he gave everyone their bikes back.
Get on the trike!
But now, my friend Jonathan pointed out to me that they're all living on Maple Street together. Buford and Baljeet's houses were transplanted. I think that's adorable. It sells the idea that they're all neighborhood friends. It makes it more justifiable that they walk to Phineas and Ferb's house every single day. Also, what the hell is this? I'm just now realizing this building has apparently existed since 2008, and I've never once perceived its existence in my entire life. Part 4. Mitchel Musso, oh my goodness. Mitchel Musso is gone, reduced to atoms. Just 3 days before the season dropped, I released my world-famous Pair of Kings video, in which I discussed his 2023 arrest. And I was wondering for a long time, will he still be in this next season? As they announced the cast, there was no mention of him, and I started realizing, oh my god, he's not gonna be in this, is he? When these episodes dropped on Disney Plus at midnight, the very first thing I did was watch Meap Me in St. Louis to see if Mitchel Musso was still the voice of Jeremy. I knew we'd have to hear him in the opening 30 seconds during the fake trailer.
As a matter of fact, I object to this union.
As a matter of fact, I object to this union, but only because it's cuter than my shark koala.
Networks like animation because they don't have to pay the actors squat.
Plus, they can replace him and no one can tell the diddly difference.
It's crazy, because Candace Against the Universe finally gave Jeremy a personality. I was watching that and thinking, oh my god, he could have been entertaining all along. Now, Jeremy's like a complete non-factor. He only speaks in 2 episodes and has a grand total of 7 lines. The entire Candace plot of A Chip to the Vet is Candace visiting Jeremy at Mr. Slushy Dog, and they strategically structured this episode to only give him 4 lines of dialogue. I think the voice is a pretty good match, impression-wise, but I think it's missing the cool factor that Jeremy has.
That might be why they made me assistant junior manager. Just got promoted.
When Ferb was first recast in Milo Murphy's Law, it was very off-putting at first, but I just needed time and exposure to get used to it. I'm still pretty weirded out by this Jeremy because they're not giving us that time and exposure to settle into the voice. What's even stranger is that Jeremy's new voice is completely and mysteriously uncredited. I imagine to prevent the new actor from getting harassed online, as is prone to happen during recasts. I asked a friend who asked a friend who asked a friend who asked a friend, and they told their friend who told their friend who told their friend who told me who the actor is, according to them. But I have no actual evidence other than sourceless, fifth-hand information disseminated down a chain of people who do not know and do not know me. Part 5. The Boat of Theseus. A lot about Phineas and Ferb has evolved and changed over the course of almost 20 years, and I definitely noticed a lot of subtle differences between the revival and the original run. First thing, the mysterious force. In the Across the Second Dimension movie, Candace becomes convinced that a mystical force of nature is causing all of her brother's inventions to disappear. This was a one-off concept exclusive to Candace's storyline in that movie, and it was never mentioned in the series. But in season 5, for whatever reason, Candace is obsessed with the mysterious force. Like it's been folded into the series as her permanent mantra.
The mysterious force that takes away your inventions took Mom away! The mysterious force just zapped the boys' invention! And the mysterious force will be fooled into letting what the boys build stay!
Even Doofenshmirtz seems to acknowledge the mysterious force now.
You know, I never really know where these beams go, but I like to think it's a mysterious force for evil, doing something bad to someone, somewhere.
The movie seemed to comically reject the idea of the mysterious force actually existing, whereas it seems like this season believes in it. Like there's a philosophical shift in how the creative team thinks about the intersection of the A-plot and the B-plot.
Usually some unforeseen element would have removed our invention by now. Perhaps we should take it down?
I'm sure nature will find a way.
The original series really treated this like a string of hilarious and severely unfortunate coincidences happening on a daily basis, whereas now, the show lends serious credence to the idea that a mystical hand of fate is influencing everything. In much the same vein, the show's obsessed with using biscuits as an expletive, which I don't believe ever happened before.
Oh, biscuits! I'm pulling your biscuits out of the fire. I am busting your biscuits.
By season 4, the series had a roster of like 9 trillion characters who would all show up in every 11-minute episode. It seems like this revival has taken a more back-to-basics approach, with characters like Norm, Roger, Stacy, and Irving not appearing nearly as often as they used to. Stacy has some great showcase episodes this season, so it's not like she's missed, but Roger's only made 1 appearance with 1 line. Norm's only had 3 lines, and for some reason the vocal processing's not quite right on him.
On its head, sir? Now I've been turned 90 degrees.
And the craziest thing to me is that Irving literally hasn't spoken yet. He's only cameoed in 2 episodes. In the original run, he would show up in like every other episode as an almost obligated running gag to be Phineas and Ferb's biggest fan and stalker. In the post-show era, where Phineas and Ferb went away but not really, Irving was the only major character who never talked. That trend has continued because he still hasn't said a word. Once Irving got introduced, I don't think the original series ever had a 20-episode stretch without him. He just disappears from the opening musical number too. He's at the school and then he leaves by the time the kids reach the backyard. What, did he have something better to do? Meanwhile, Dink Winkerson was a throwaway reporter in a grand total of 2 11-minute segments of the entire original series. He's been in 3 episodes of the revival and played a significant story role already. My friend Jonathan speculates that the writers got used to doing reporter segments on Dan's other show, Hamster and Gretel, and now they've bled into Phineas and Ferb. Carl was a character I used to think of in very much the same vein as Norm and Irving. He was used in basically every episode by the 4th season, but unlike them, he continues to be used in basically every episode of the 5th season, usually popping in for his 1 or 2 lines during briefings. This seems to cement Carl as an essential part of the show's fabric, in the same vein as Buford and Baljeet, who obviously didn't start as main characters either. All of this reminds me of the Real Jim's Simpsons analysis videos, where he's like, the showrunners of the season 14 through 19 era used Monty Mole Man only 23% as often as season 7 through 13 showrunners did. Stuff like that is just pointless enough to be very interesting to me. Like, it's fun to track how certain characters ebb and flow in relevance through different iterations of the creative team and shows that have run on for this amount of time. To touch on that back to basics approach I mentioned, I noticed a lot of elements from season 1 return in full force. For instance, as a kid, I was always sad because by season 4, the show had largely phased out the quirky worky song montage music. Here, it plays in almost every other episode. As a kid, I was disappointed because Perry's hover car had basically stopped appearing by season 4. But in this revival, it's back all the time. The farmer and his wife is another gag that the show phased out as it went along, and my younger self would be pleased to see it back pretty regularly, along with some amazing subversions of the usual trope.
I can't believe you opened an aquarium but forgot to buy any fish.
There's even an episode where the show, for the first time in like a decade, acknowledges that other people live in Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated. As the show went on, I think for the whole 3rd and 4th seasons, it was just never addressed again that people live here. This culminated in Milo Murphy's Law, when the tower got destroyed and Doofenshmirtz was sleeping on Milo's couch for the entire 2nd season because he had nowhere else to live. But finally, Doofenshmirtz has tenants again, which is an aspect that I missed because that honestly made it exponentially funnier that the building got destroyed in every episode. Like, what's happening to these people? We get an episode which starts with Baljit running to the backyard having a panic attack about a very specific problem, which was such an underrated staple of the first show, and I'm glad it hasn't been forgotten about. Something I thought could have been forgotten about, Isabella's crush on Phineas was not acknowledged whatsoever in Candace Against the Universe. She also exclusively wore her Fireside Girl outfit in that movie. And I saw speculation and questioning online, like, were they intentionally doing away with the crush and the pink skirt and the bow? Was it some sort of girl power thing? It felt totally plausible at that point in time and culture, but it turns out it was just a fluke because she wears her usual clothes, and there's already enough Finabella material in season 5 to fill a 6-minute compilation. If you go back and look at the very early episodes, there were always multiple instances of Mom missing the episode's big idea. Candace drags Mom to see Mount Rushmore, then a geyser blocks it. Then she drags Mom to see Mount Rushmore, then the boys' fake wall blocks it. Then she drags her one last time as lava destroys it. By the midway point of season 1, the show had already streamlined its premise to Mom only showing up at the end, even in stories where the invention was mobile and around town. But I just noticed here, in the episode Dry Another Day, there are once again multiple instances of Mom just missing the ice luge, which contributes to this episode feeling extremely classic in nature. And my favorite, I think we get the very first reference to Linda and Charlene being friends since early season 1.
I'm off to Charlene's to return her cake pan.
I believe the most recent acknowledgement of this, prior to season 5, was It's a Mud, Mud, Mud World, which aired in the series' first month during February. What an insane relationship to pick up 211 episodes later. But on the flip side, the show stops doing some things it gotten used to doing. Every post-show special had Phineas and Ferb casually hanging out around Doofenshmirtz. But here, the show is aggressively keeping those two halves of the storyline separate at all costs. It's funny to remember, like, oh yeah, they don't normally know each other.
Do their faces look familiar?
Nah, they don't look like anybody.
The show also seems to forget its consistent running gag of Phineas and Ferb's tower being on the backside of the moon. That's a bummer. I always thought that was funny that we kept seeing it. I've noticed that in season 5, the show seems to have completely forgotten that Carl is at a keyboard pulling up all the graphics during Major Monogram's mission briefs.
Carl, the light bulb in the 6000, still on screen. Since Carl is out, I'll have to do the visual reference myself.
In season 5, there's multiple instances where Carl is on the screen while visual elements get pulled up over him.
He also updated his social media status to evil again.
It's his whole shtick. It's on the side of his building.
And understandably, but sadly, the show has forgotten that Candace has her own car, which she got in the very sweet, heartfelt, underrated episode My Sweet Ride, where Lawrence and the boys restored it for her. As a result, we see Candace get her driver's license and then opt to follow the boys on her bike in the very next episode. So far, the only series running gag that we haven't heard come back is, hey, aren't you a little young to do this? No one said that so far. And I guess they're in middle school now, like, they're probably old enough to make a bookshelf. There's an episode called The Haberdasher, and I have enough thoughts on it that we might as well just walk through it. It's apparently a story that writer Joshua Pruitt's had in mind since the original series, and he was excited to finally write. I randomly ran into him at a Barnes & Noble a couple months ago, and he seemed very polite. Part 6. BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural, Season 4, Episode 1. Doofenshmirtz turns himself into the Mothman and takes a bite out of Perry's hat, forcing Perry to head to the Auka hat maker, the Haberdasher. This guy's so silly. He makes hundreds upon hundreds of hats for the agents, many of which he lists during his song. Perry's so sad without his hat, it's so cute. Give him his hat back! Perry has to fight Mothman Doof with a whole bunch of hats before ultimately getting his own fedora back.
I guess there's no more hats to eat. Hat maker will do.
Perry very consciously chooses a fedora over all of the other options, which I realize means that every single agent in the entire organization is also making a conscious choice to wear a fedora, and this poor man is making all of these hats for agents who do not want them. Also, here's something a little distracting. This guy's drawn in a completely different art style. Like, this is a Hamster and Gretel character. In the original series, all background extras and side characters were generic slugs who blended into the woodwork to make Phineas and Ferb and Perry stand out. One of my criticisms of Milo Murphy's Law was that all of that series' main characters looked like they would be bland extras in the background of Phineas and Ferb, in large part due to the desaturated color palettes. Hamster and Gretel, meanwhile, tended to give most characters, from what I've seen, very bubbly designs. Because all the Swampyverse shows have a trend of reusing and recoloring incidentals, very Hamster and Gretel looking background extras are just randomly way more vibrant than everyone else in the original series. Because Dan's posted so many behind the scenes segments online, something notable is that there was originally a song written about Doofenshmirtz being a Mothman. But then 7 months later, they circled back around and wrote the song that's actually in the episode. Strange to see a song clearly written for this episode that just doesn't exist in the final product. Maybe they realized who their guest star was at that point and wanted to give him a number. The fact that Alan Cummings voiced the Haberdasher means that Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh are 1 degree removed from multiple Survivor winners, but more importantly, Rob Sesternino, who should have won season 6 back in 2003. There's also a really cute B story where Phineas and Ferb are gone with their mom, but Isabella, Buford, and Baljeet want to build something to impress them when they get back. We basically see them struggle and immediately fall into conflict with each other, which is hilarious to me because it kind of creates the impression that none of them have lives outside of Phineas and Ferb, and none of them have any reason to interact without Phineas and Ferb, which the original finale sort of touched on where they were a lot meaner to each other, but the boys didn't exist. Then we get Candace still trying to bust the friends to lend credence to all the other things she said, only to have to navigate the fact that Phineas answers the phone.
Mom, let's head home. Candace wants us to see something.
If I had a nickel for every time Candace promised to show me something and nothing was there, I'd have $5.20, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened 104 times, right?
I laughed so hard. Everyone I've watched this with has laughed at that joke. I will say, they do the same nickel joke later in the season, and no one's laughed.
Roger is having another commemorative statue of himself. If I had a nickel for every time that's happened.
You'd have 2 nickels, sir.
Yes, I know how it goes, Carl.
That was not adding to the legacy. They should have just done it once. The kids find themselves completely unable to build anything individually and decide to combine their efforts. An aspect of Isabella that seems to be forgotten is that in the beginning, she was just as mechanically inclined as Phineas and Ferb. Please remember, her and the Fireside Girls constructed a working time machine completely on their own. Phineas and Ferb weren't even there. But now she's not able to make anything. And this isn't so much an instance of the episode getting her character wrong, more an observation that her character has just changed over time. In the end, Isabella is eager to show Phineas her invention, and of course it gets turned into a moth and flies away.
Look!
This is like a perfect example of an episode still following the Phineas and Ferb formula to a T, but twisting so many things on their head, being really inventive, bringing new ideas to the table, and I'm a really big fan of it. Part 7. 4 completely unrelated paragraphs that I've chosen to group together due to their brevity. Paragraph 1. I opened the video making fun of the goat meme, which ruined an otherwise flawless episode of television.
I could put a chip in my goat. No, wait, even better. My goldfish. I need to hit Slushy Dog more often. Sorry, thighs.
Dan Povenmire is a terminally online individual. How could he not know that everyone is tired of this? You might be watching this video thinking, well, I'm not tired of it. Yes, you are, shut up. When Thor: Love and Thunder came out, half the commentary I saw was just baffled annoyance at the goat screaming. They're like video essays. Some of my friends I watched the episode with were like, all right, it was kind of funny the 4th time. And I was like, no, it's not.
From that time I went feral.
Paragraph 2. I wish season 5 had a new theme song, with a new list of things the boys could do. I was actually fully expecting it, since the show was always in love with rewriting the theme song for event episodes, and I was kind of surprised when there wasn't a new one, because they've already done everything in their original theme song. Part of the fun as a kid was watching them very, very slowly check off every item across the course of 4 seasons, and I thought it'd be fun to see that happen again, but instead we just get this strange hybrid where they record, there's another 104 days, but then they awkwardly drop this version on the 7th episode and go back to the original. Paragraph 3. In License to Bust, Doofenshmirtz's plotline is really sloppy. His entire problem is that he needs to hurry to get his groceries home. So he creates his green to redinator to change the traffic lights in his favor so he can rush home before his perishables go bad. So here's the timeline of events. Doofenshmirtz takes off, Perry saves people from traffic chaos, then he leaps into Doofenshmirtz's car to see he's picked up passengers.
I've acquired a few more things that need to get somewhere fast. There's an expectant mother, a magician holding his breath, and an ice sculpture of a pregnant magician holding her breath. Don't ask, it's been a weird day.
What happened to his groceries? The groceries, the entire reason he was in a hurry, are not mentioned again. It's like they were so attracted to the jokes and gags they could make with these passengers that they lost track of the character's motivation in a 4-minute subplot, and that makes me mad. Paragraph 4. My favorite episode of the revival is The Candace Suit, a full-fledged sequel to that time Buford had life-size molds of Candace in the episode Doofopus.
Buford had a mold of me.
Buford's got molds of all of us, Candace.
This is genuinely one of the funniest episodes of the entire show, and I was laughing out loud like every 30 seconds. I'm not even gonna tell you what happens in this. Watch this yourself. This was my entire sense of humor bottled and concentrated within 11 minutes.
Got any more in here?
The entire story centers on Buford and Candace, and one of the most absurd and perfectly executed premises in the history of the show. The animatic for this episode's song actually leaked like a year before the season came out, and it was probably the best possible song to leak because it left me intrigued with hundreds of questions. After watching the episode, I still have about 100 questions. If a full-fledged exploration of Buford's life-size molds wasn't enough, the season makes a lot of references to his past.
And a platypus, an obvious metaphor for whatever's keeping you down.
I'm not speaking metaphorically.
Part 8.
I know what that is!
The Mary MacGuffin dolls on Vanessa's pajamas. The giant squid Buford fought is underwater. Schmebulok from Gravity Falls is here for some reason, even though that's not what garden gnomes look like in this universe. We see a ton of obscure inventions like the speed boots or the animation studio, plus a rendition of Dan Povenmire's first ever drawing of Phineas. Phineas and Ferb is a wonderful show for people who get dopamine rushes from recognizing imagery they've seen previously. We see little Melissa, the Lil Spark from season 3, who has grown up and joined the Fireside Girls proper, which is super fun. They even tracked down the same actress to reprise her 1-episode role from when she was 5. Imagine getting that phone call as a 20-year-old. Love Handle references random eclectic events that happened in their past.
Man, that was like Cleveland 92 all over again.
I remember not understanding this was a joke as a kid, and I always asked my parents, what happened in Albuquerque 93? And they had no idea. And it's not really a reference, but we get an instrumental rendition of the Wii Game exclusive song Gotta Get Gone, which we'd never actually heard in the series before. It's funny, Milo Murphy's Law was full of references to Phineas and Ferb. Literally every episode stopped dead in its tracks to be like, hey, remember the roller coaster? Remember Pizzazium Infinianite? Remember Klimpaloon, the old-timey bathing suit that lives in the Himalayas?
There's squirrels in my pants. There's squirrels in my pants. Squirrels in my pants.
It got really obnoxious because I felt like they would rather be making Phineas and Ferb. That feeling is validated here because in this season full of references, guess how many references were made to Milo Murphy's Law? 2. This billboard in the background has a pizza store from a couple Milo episodes, and Candace listens to Chop Away at My Heart for 5 seconds. Hamster and Gretel only gets 2 references as well, this street sign and a pool floaty. And none of these bug me because they're tasteful little Easter eggs in the background, not pausing the whole story to say, guys, remember Perry the platypus?
What happened to these platypus pajamas? Why are they teal? Aren't platypuses brown?
Someone's idea of artsy.
Part 9. Bouncing around the controversy. I've noticed that this season seems to be making a lot of conscious efforts to respond to and absolve cultural criticisms of the series in the past. In 2021, Dan Povenmire came under fire on TikTok for the stereotypical representation of Baljeet in the series, and he made a response taking it incredibly seriously.
A character that you have created is being used to attack South Asians en masse in this app every day. I can say with confidence that every South Asian creator with a following on this app has been called Baljeet or some other variation upon it.
Baljeet was added to the show to represent kids from other cultures that didn't necessarily have the same concept of summer vacation that we do. So we did often lean into those cultural differences for comedy, and that may not have aged well.
Because if you think about it, this is one of the most well-known Indian characters in pop culture, recognized by hundreds upon hundreds of millions of people. His cultural identity often being a big part of his storylines, and his stories never actually been told by an Indian storyteller.
India!
What I've observed now is that for the first time, an Indian writer was hired onto the staff named Sunny Karnan. And if you look at the season's first Baljeet-centric episode, it's written by him. And he's a great find, like his episodes are really funny. You can tell he gets the show and he's bringing new ideas to the table.
Wine glass delivery for P. Platypus.
And I'm only realizing this now, but there aren't any instances this season where Baljeet's concerned with grades or studying. They're giving him other things to do, like wanting to be an actor, and I think it's working just fine. I probably wouldn't have even noticed if I weren't writing this video because there was always way more going on with Baljeet in the show anyway. The criticism I've heard is that the original show had a quirky little problem where they may have accidentally forgotten that darker skin tones exist while populating the crowd scenes.
I'm really dull, but you'll like Tom.
Drew a banjo on my mouth.
You'd never know. I put a rug.
You forgot your socks.
I need a hug.
I lost it down.
I'm into Sprockets.
Never guess what's in my pocket.
I'm Tom.
I'm Keith.
I'm Sven.
I'm Rex.
Next.
Guess who Kevin Michael Richardson voiced in this sequence? A rooster. But now, people of color have migrated into the city of Danville. This trend started back in Hamster and Gretel, where they would just recolor existing character models to represent the beautiful variety that humanity has to offer. The same thing's happening in Phineas and Ferb now. Remember that fat kid who fell out of the tree in episode 1? He's black now. Remember Milo Murphy's mother who was a main character? This is her now. Look at Doofenshmirtz's background dancers. They're finally beating the Hitler's master race allegations. However, there's also a black police officer from Milo Murphy's Law who's now been recolored to be white. Balance is important. I have revisited a lot of Disney Channel series on this channel, and Phineas and Ferb is probably the one that's aged the best. So many of those sitcoms would just mock other cultures to their audience of 5-year-olds. Meanwhile, I don't believe a single joke in Phineas and Ferb was ever intended to punch down at anyone. It's always been such an open-minded show. And the fact that Dan and Swampy are silently taking these steps without any fanfare tells me that they genuinely care and feel bad and want to make things right, because they've done so much more than anyone asked of them. I think that's awesome. Even if recoloring all of the white characters is a really funny way to approach it. Here's something I noticed. Dan, at the time of the show, was very adamant that Vanessa and Ferb belonged together, and generally didn't seem to care all that much about Monty and Vanessa. The entire internet, however, informed him rather vocally and in no uncertain terms that this relationship is rather strange. And I noticed that despite Ferb and Vanessa spending a whole episode in the same location, they do not interact at all. And I'm wondering if the decision was finally made to give up on this strange love connection. Curious.
You remember my brothers?
Yeah, hey guys.
Hey! Oh, don't talk to the tiny ones. Upstairs for some real fun.
Also in this episode, we see Candace invite Vanessa and Stacy to a slumber party. I was thinking while watching this, rip Jenny, and then someone tweeted that. I can't believe 85,000 people remember and care about Jenny. But TBH, Vanessa's way better. Now that it's clear Vanessa's filling her void as a character, I don't really care anymore. We get our first ever Vanessa Buford interaction, and possibly one of the most impactful throwaway lines of all time.
Go downstairs and take a bite of Perry's food.
I already did that when I came in.
Hold on. Guys, does Vanessa know Perry's civilian identity? Is she aware that her dad's nemesis is Candace's pet? When did she learn this? Why would they completely gloss over that? Like, I guess it's possible she hasn't made the connection yet. In the same way Doofenshmirtz thinks every platypus is named Perry. But she just seems way too smart for that. If this random therapist can figure it out, I think Vanessa can. Half of Phineas and Ferb depends on characters withholding information from each other for no discernible reason. And this may be the most incredible yet, where Vanessa knows Candace's pet is a secret agent and knows where her dad's nemesis lives, but very casually isn't telling either of them. This is even more unhinged when you remember that Stacy also knows, which means that both of Candace's two closest friends are more loyal to Perry than they are to her. It's cemented in canon that Vanessa dates Ferb. Does she withhold this information from her own boyfriend too? The craziest can of worms is open now, and I hope they dive into that can and explore it. Part 10.
We're building an animation studio so we can make our very own cartoon show.
I thought cartoons were all made by computer.
As prophesized, I think we need to talk about the season's animation, which has prompted much spirited discussion. So there's been a lot of viral posts praising the gorgeous animation of the revival, and there have also been posts criticizing the stiff and cheap animation of the revival. There's been war between all of these dorks with their strong opinions. Is the animation good? Is the animation bad? Well, it's both. Shots will rapidly waver back and forth between looking way better than the original series and way worse than the original series. To quickly establish my credentials, I'm an animator and an indie animation director. Lots of people ask why I disappear from YouTube for 6 months at a time. Well, usually I split my time between 2 projects. First, I've been able to rizz up the creative team of my favorite series, Transformers Animated, and I've been given all of the series scripts and storyboards, which I use to animate deleted scenes which I show off at Transformers conventions. I've gotten in touch with almost the entire voice cast to reprise their roles. I've also teamed up with the show's head writer to tell cancelled Season 4 stories as comics in an unofficial capacity, but that's beside the point. Secondly, I've been directing an animated pilot called Para Not Normal, working with a really talented team of animators for about a year now, guiding the animation process through extensive notes and feedback, relying on an understanding of the art style and the principles of motion. So that's where most of my time goes when I'm not releasing videos here, and that's where almost all of my YouTube revenue goes, in case you've ever wondered. My tax guy is very confused by the fact that most of my income disappears. So all this to say, I'm not a Giga Chad expert of my craft by any means, heavens no, but I know enough to know what I'm talking about and assess what's so quirky about this revival. After a years-long hiatus that wasn't really a hiatus, Phineas and Ferb returned with Candace Against the Universe, which was divided between 3 animation studios. Conventional wisdom and analysis says the first third was done by Yerum, and it looked really bad. Stiff, super cheap and digital, blurry pixels in the backgrounds because they weren't produced at the right resolution. The middle portion of the movie looks a lot better, animated by Synergy, who worked on the original series. And in comes Snipple with the action climax, which is cinematic, gorgeous, and it may genuinely be the best that Phineas and Ferb has ever looked. The visuals of that movie were a roller coaster. Noting this new studio's talent, and also citing that Snipple had the least retakes of all 3 studios, Dan and Swampy gave them full reign over this 5th season of Phineas and Ferb, beating out Synergy, who'd worked on the 2nd through 4th season of the original run. But animating 24 minutes of a movie is a far, far smaller commitment than animating an entire TV series. Obviously, there's going to be a smaller budget for TV animation than that movie had. And even beyond that, I think they were not able to commit the same amount of time and care to each and every shot. One of the season's animators posted a reel of his rough animation before the season came out, spoiling a lot of major moments, and the entire comment section was saying, isn't Disney gonna execute you for this? And he replied to every comment saying, it's my work, fellas, I can post what I want. Disney executed him. But what's important is it shows he was animating this frame by frame and not using character rigs at all. Meanwhile, there are plenty of shots that, to my eye and the eye of countless internet observers, look like rigged animation with pre-drawn character rigs. What gives me pause is the King of the Hill reboot, which everyone thought was rigged, but shockingly turned out not to be. So out of the fear of being wrong on the internet, something I've never been before, I'll say there's 2 possibilities. None of this is rigged animation, despite often looking like it is, or the animation team were all given a choice: animate hand-drawn or use pre-existing rigs in Toon Boom. And there's nothing unusual about this on paper. I feel like most rigged shows have plenty of shots which aren't using the rigs at all, even if you can't tell at first glance. But that's because they're animated very intentionally to be indistinguishable. That's not the case here in Season 5, where the difference in quality between the hand-drawn and the allegedly rigged shots can be very pronounced. When you cut rapidly back and forth from gorgeous hyperfluid animation to cardboard cutouts, it's weird. In large part because the impressive animation everyone's praising are such random, completely innocuous shots with no narrative or character importance. Because it's a little odd when Stacy folding napkins looks like this, while Candace dramatically reacting to the tragic disintegration of her mother looks like this. I've never seen The Owl House, but I know that Luz and Amity's first kiss looks incredible. This is a massive moment, not just in the 2 main characters' lives and story arcs, but in the history of LGBTQ representation on Disney Channel, and it's a moment that called for animation like this. Or in Gravity Falls, James Baxter was called in to animate the pterodactyl in Land Before Swine, because Alex Hirsch and the team felt very unsatisfied with the TV quality animation that initially came back for that character from the overseas studio. studio. It was a very specific creature they wanted to give a higher degree of fluidity to its movement. And that's how we approached the Jersey Devil in Para Not Normal. An animator I work with named Devin O'Neill has entered God mode and gone goated and cracked. And I specifically assigned him to specialize on animating this ugly loser goat. Also last June, I said Para Not Normal would be coming out within a year. I was wrong. What a foolish, naive idiot. There wouldn't be a problem if the Phineas and Ferb season allocated its resources more strategically and singled out these extraordinarily skilled animators who choose the hand-drawn approach and gave them shots which hold a greater amount of relevance to the story, whether that be dance numbers or dramatic moments. This season almost feels like I'm watching a reanimated project on YouTube. You can see the animators' individual differences in skill levels so clearly, which is super weird in an official season of Phineas and Ferb ordered by Disney.
But if you and I teamed up and both trapped Perry the Platypus, he'd be twice as trapped and we could split the tag and bag prize.
If you look at the entire original show, but more relevantly, Snipple's own work on Candace Against the Universe, every shot is so consistent with the last. Same line weight, same fluidity, but for whatever reason, there's a strange lack of quality control in season 5, and everyone and their mother has seemed to notice it. I see a lot of people complain that the 5th season seems cheap, but to me, I'm not sure if that's the case. Look at the background work, look at the frequent ambition. I feel like a very similar amount of money is getting pumped into this as it was in the past. If you're Dan and Swampy, animation powerhouses who could probably retire at this point, and Disney comes to you on their hands and knees asking for more Phineas and Ferb, I think you're going to negotiate the budget you need. Do you think streaming era Disney voluntarily gave them 40 episodes? Or do you think those were fiercely negotiated by Dan and Swampy so the whole crew could have stability and job security? Dan even negotiated a whole nother season of Hamster and Gretel as part of this deal. I think Dan and Swampy were very much in the power position of these negotiations. I don't think the wonky animation is budgetary. I think it boils down to an issue with direction. And if I had to describe the animation of the 5th season in a single word, it would be digital. There's a clear and polished look to everything, which is inherently less charming since you can always see at a glance that it's employing newer technology. Now, obviously, Phineas and Ferb was always animated digitally. The original series was using the freshest digital technology available at the time as well, but I think there's a number of stylistic choices they were making that offset this. First off, line thickness is probably the most in-your-face visual difference between season 5 and the first 4. Super thick outlines are surrounding these characters, but what's weird is that it's not consistent at all. Tons of shots have really thin outlines, exactly like you would have seen in the original show. And this thickness will wildly change from shot to shot. Here, the clowns have super heavy strokes, and here, the boys have narrow tan outlines. Sometimes they're inconsistent within one shot. Isabella's outlines are way thicker than Phineas's, and they're right next to each other. A potential cause of this are character rigs. When you drag a character rig into the frame, you scale it up to match the storyboard, and the strokes grow with the characters, unless you click Scale None when setting up the rigs. That'll keep the line weight from growing with the character. There does seem to be a pattern that the closer a character is to the camera, the thicker the lines are, which wasn't the case in the first 4 seasons.
It is hard for me to make believe when that alien has corn-chip teeth.
The thick lines also go a long way to make this look and feel computerized. I was trying to figure out why the thick strokes look so digital, and I think it boils down to the fact that during the days of cell animation, you never really saw thick outlines like that, because they were drawn onto plastic sheets with a marker. And it'd be really clumsy and imprecise to draw with a jumbo-size marker, so no one really did, I guess. Then a lot of Flash animated cartoons started introducing super thick outlines in the 90s and 2000s. So these thick outlines screaming digital really boils down to the fact that you never saw outlines like this until digital. There used to be little bumps or crevices or a curved arc on the bridge of Phineas's nose. It was literally an artist drawing this by hand, likely via tablet, and with all the imperfections that came with it. But in any shot in season 5, Phineas's nose is like a perfect and exactly straight line that only computer assistant tools could pull off consistently.
Wow, we're all computery.
Besides subtle differences in line art, the show has the same general art style. Everyone's drawn about the same as they were before, same proportions, same rules, no crazy changes. While there's some rare instances of distractingly off-model shots, like Perry having a bizarre humanistic leg in episode 1, they're few and far between and not frequent enough to be a concern. The problem with season 5 aren't how the characters are drawn, it's how they move. Often, something that really sticks out to me, I feel like there's just not enough frames to properly sell the movement. There'll be like 1 or 2 in-betweens between keyframes. There's this weird shot in episode 1 where Phineas runs like a Smiling Friends character.
I'm Mr. Frog.
A lot of them lack any follow-through, which is the little bounce/rebound any part of your body will naturally do when you move it. We just go from point A to point B, and the movement doesn't feel organic.
We've caught up to the mysterious summer skier. What's your secret to keeping cool?
I guess it's this giant wheel of ice. Wait, am I on TV?
You will be at 4 o'clock when we'll find out who is she, where did she come from, and what's up with her neck. Stay tuned.
Some of these shots literally look like Dan and Swampy when they were stop-motion animated. Let's take this shot as a representative example. It's clear to me that the body and limbs were simply being rotated as solid blocks, not redrawn from scratch with each frame. Here's this shot of Candace, and here's an older shot with a similar rotation. Look at the subtle changes in the hair. Each one of these frames is an individual drawing. When you don't do this, your brain can notice the cheap feeling stiffness, even if it's not a conscious realization. If it turns out that season 5 isn't rigged, this is why it feels this way. Because limbs and body parts are simply being rotated across each other as blocks, rather than being redrawn. And this may be a massive contribution to the variance in shot quality. Some animators are choosing to do this, and some aren't. I also have to talk about the strange technical problems this season is plagued by. There are a lot of instances where characters just snap from keyframe to keyframe.
I don't want you to forget to show up for the photo.
Those pictures are so corny.
Watch this at 0.5 speed. No in-betweens, just snap. It's bizarre. How could something like that make it through? How could this be completely signed off on with no notes in a show where that's not the animation style?
Hey, Meap.
We need your help with Big Mitch.
Of course. Oh, sorry, Buford.
Look at this background behind Phineas just restart. And this, I think, is the smoking gun. Watch Linda here.
Gotta see what the boys are doing. I'm hot on their trail.
She starts and then restarts her animation. I think I know what's happening. It's an issue with the symbols. Think of a symbol like a folder. It's just a way to organize and compartmentalize your animation timeline to stop it from getting cluttered and incomprehensible. As an example, let's look at this shot I animated of the world-famous character Rattletrap from Transformers Animated Season 3, Episode 11.
Thanks for the tip. Now get lost, Rattletrap.
I get a clean record for this, right?
He was poised to be a major player in Season 4, but then the show was fucking canceled! If I click inside of a symbol, you'll see all of the keyframes. Each dot represents a different drawing, which I chose to separate by limb because I'm not a psychopath. Here, right here, is the 97th frame of the symbol. Click outside. It's also the 97th frame of the overall timeline. Unless I change that. If I drag the 97th frame of the symbol to play on the 108th frame of the timeline, the animation's gonna repeat itself.
I get a clean record for this, right?
I think this is what happened to Linda's symbol. It was surely animated correctly inside the symbol, but a keyframe on the main timeline was slid around and caused it to repeat. There's plenty of reasons to mess with things outside the timeline. Sometimes you might have one singular frame inside the symbol, which you set to last 30 frames in the main timeline. In doing this, sometimes keyframes accidentally get created or slid around or otherwise messed with. This is anecdotal conjecture, but this feels like an error caused in post-production. Maybe Candace was properly animated here inside the symbol, but the timing was tweaked later in the process, and that accidentally caused the in-betweens to get cut out of the final animation. I've had that exact same thing happen to me in the past, and I've had to re-export. Another possibility is that this happened in the editing timeline. In the new episode Book Flub, there's a shot where both Linda and Candace snap simultaneously.
Just scope the perimeter to find clues.
Maybe this was originally a longer shot, it was supposed to be cut short, but they somehow left the tail end of the shot in the, I don't know! Look at this particularly jarring shot of Mitch.
I have found the perfect vacation destination. Set a course for this Earth.
His arm isn't animated coming down, but what bugs me is that all of the frames are there because you animated the arm going up. Just reverse them. It's not gonna look great, but it's gonna look better than no in-betweens.
Vacation destination. Set a course for this Earth.
Something was pointed out on Twitter that I don't think I would have otherwise clocked. Look at Meap's lip sync.
And to make matters worse, my own Alliance commandos are after me.
The underbite keeps snapping into place for one frame at a time. When Meap spoke in the original series, they didn't cut to the underbite as his default closed mouth pose. There were two versions of Meap's mouth cycle, one with the mustache and one without.
Meap!
Children, thank you for your help in bringing down this villainous scoundrel.
Meap doesn't need a mustache to speak in Season 5, which we'll talk about, so they went with the mustacheless version. But this particular mouth was only ever designed to make one noise.
Meap!
This set of mouth frames was not designed to support full lines of dialogue, and I think they needed to redesign the mouth to make it less jarring. Often in animation, since the shift to digital, you'll draw a whole bunch of mouth frames all within their own symbol, and then you'll just toggle between them for lip sync. If you take a gander at any shot of Transformers animated, you'll see that there are only 4 distinct mouth frames, which is why the show has the worst lip syncing of all time.
Even if I have to take matters into my own hands.
I've taken the liberty of recreating every single Meap mouth frame from this shot. You can see exactly what the problem is. If you take this underbite and replace it with a normal mouth, it eliminates all of the wonkiness that was pointed out by these brave and valiant users of the internet. They're called Visemes, or Vice, I don't know. When the opening song was posted online, my very first thought I texted people was, why is Baljeet front-facing? Then as the season went on, it kept happening. This season is obsessed with drawing Baljeet at a front-facing angle. It's strange. During the Milo Murphy's Law crossover, there was this front-facing Baljeet that all 7 members of the fandom laughed at for looking cursed. Now, long shots are holding on this angle. Like, imagine if Phineas started being drawn from the front by default. If you think about it, we saw Candace and Perry and Isabella from the front fairly regularly. So why not Baljeet? I guess there's nothing wrong with it. It's just strange because he's never been drawn this way so frequently before. I've realized the difference when comparing it to past animation. The difference is the nose and the hair. Baljeet is pretty much drawn the same, but his nose is angled, so it looks like he's at a slight angle. His hair is a little bit thicker on the left than on the right. That's not happening here. He's staring right down the barrel of the camera completely symmetrically. Round nose, equally sized hair. You just need to make the most minor tweak for this to look not horrifying, but they're not doing it for whatever reason. There are similar instances. Some character details are just different now. For instance, Carl's eyes are just little dots in season 5. And I couldn't remember off the top of my head what it was supposed to look like, but I knew this was wrong. Carl used to have regular eyes behind his glasses in all 4 seasons of the original show, but now they're only these little dots. Same with Irving. Look at this, his pupil's not even attached to his head. In the original run, Gretchen the Fireside Girl was the only character whose eyes were rendered like this, which made sense given her cutesy little design. But now this is the norm for every character with glasses, and I think I have a theory as to why this happened. In the original show, Vanessa's skin tone was a 1-to-1 match to Doofenshmirtz. Then suddenly she showed up for a cameo in Milo Murphy's Law with a jarringly darker skin tone, like she just hopped in a tanning bed. And this skin tone returned for Candace Against the Universe. Many years back, my friend Jonathan Edward did a 3-hour Zoom interview with Dan Povenmire, holding him hostage and missing every social cue that Dan clearly no longer wanted to be there. However, Dan's suffering was to the vast benefit of society, because these are hands down the best questions he's ever been asked. Dan apparently hadn't noticed Vanessa's skin changed at all.
The main thing was that comparison to Doof, because her and Doof's tones are very similar, in Milo it's like...
noticed that at all. So I don't know how or why that happened. It may have been a mistake somebody made in one model that we pulled and thought that was the right model or something like that. I literally didn't notice it at all.
This tanner skin tone returns in the 5th season despite Jonathan's warnings, and is just an accident. Her model was probably redrawn for Milo, and the hue of her skin was eye-dropped from somewhere else. It's probably exactly what happened for Carl. A new model was drawn up, but the artist gave him dots. They just didn't notice, Dan and Swampy didn't notice, and now Carl has different eyes. I struggle to believe it was a conscious, creative, or artistic choice to change Carl and Irving's eyes after 4 seasons. Edit! I found the model sheets! I was 100% correct! I should be given a medal! So the animators were drawing these characters with 100% accuracy to the model sheets that were given to them. But whoever drew these model sheets for the new season drew Baljeet, Carl, and Irving differently than they had ever been drawn before, and no one noticed. Woohoo! I love being right! At the end of the day, all of this is completely solid and professional looking animation. If you aren't animation inclined, you probably wouldn't notice anything's off. But if you are an animator, or you spend a lot of time admiring this medium, it's easy to notice that something is very different about this season compared to the previous 4. The animation industry is not in a great place, and with the way the economy's been going and continues to go, there's a growing incentive to only do as much work as you're paid to do. If anyone on the animation team was taking shortcuts, I can't even blame them because it's rough out there, especially with expectations constantly growing as teams get smaller and smaller. In 2011, storyboard artists were expected to do this. Now they're expected to do this for the same amount of pay. I think job creep and worker exploitation are a bigger deal than wonky animation in the Phineas and Ferb revival, but I nonetheless felt inclined to weigh in on the discourse a month late per usual. Even despite his shortcomings, very few shots here feel amateurish. This Phineas and Ferb season could have looked way worse in a darker timeline, like the Flash animations for their appearance on Jeopardy. This looks weird, but I think Jeopardy is an appropriate time for them to look weird.
Here's Phineas and Ferb.
Good inventors don't mind stealing a good idea.
Even stranger is that Phineas and Ferb are better animated in the Mark Rober YouTube collab than they are on the 60-year-old classic game show Jeopardy.
Oh, hey Mark!
Phineas!
At the end of the day, I'm not working on this production. I could have been wrong about a lot of the assertions I made. It's like they say, even a working clock is wrong twice a day. But this is my best assessment and sussing out of what's happening here. I noticed that in the opening song, they reused the exact same animation of a girl recolored in 2 different ways. There's nothing wrong with that, there's nothing unusual about that, I just wanted to point out that I noticed it. At the top of this video, I mentioned that there were 3 lingering story threads from the original series: Monty, Stacy, and Meap. And to my pleasant surprise, all 3 of these got picked up in the first batch of season 5 episodes. They were not wasting any time. And so to round out this video, let me talk about the Aurora Perry-Allis, Agent T for Teen, and the Chronicles of Meap, episode 42, part 11. Romeo and Juliet if it was good? In the original show, Monty and Vanessa had a clear progression through their episodes, each building upon the last with a new person learning their secret. Perry helped keep Doofenshmirtz in the dark, then Carl spotted them with binoculars.
What do you see?
Someone who owes me big time.
Then he blackmailed Monty under the threat of telling his dad. It was made very clear that shit would hit the fan if Monogram or Doof ever found out. And it was clearly building to something, but it built to nothing, and it petered out without any fanfare. We also saw them together during an episode taking place on Halloween, meaning there couldn't have been a resolution during the original show's summer at all, but season 5 seemed like the perfect time for this going in. I personally thought they'd kind of moved on from the Monty storyline and forgotten about it, so I wasn't expecting him to show up, and that just made it a really nice, pleasant surprise when he did. The Aurora Perry-Allis sees the Flynn Fletcher family head out on a cruise to watch the beautiful tri-state Aurora light show. When a storm blocks the sky, the boys lift the cruise ship into the air with balloons. Doofenshmirtz builds a travel sizinator to shrink and steal materials from around the pool, which is a plot which was already done far better when he was shrinking and stealing national monuments for his model train set. But this time, the twist is that Doof and Perry get shrunk down and have an Ant-Man style fight around the cruise ship. The main event, however, is Vanessa running into Monty. We learned that they separated off screen. Vanessa largely stopped answering his texts because she felt bad about keeping a secret from her dad. Shrunken down, Doof overhears this conversation.
Vanessa, was this your secret boyfriend? This guy? The guy with the enormous nostrils? Hey, you got a bat in the cave there, buddy.
Doof gets flung away, and Monty and Vanessa go on a cute date under the justification, we're on international waters. And that's it. On first watch, I thought Doofenshmirtz discovered the secret here. I was confused when nothing came of it. And in my defense, it's really not clear. The wiki even says, as of this episode, Doof knows the secret. But I think that's wrong. I think the idea is that Doof was so small, looking up, that he didn't actually recognize Monty. If I had to wager a guess, I'd say this is another continued instance of their secret almost getting revealed, but then not quite. So we see them hanging out as the episode ends. Are they back together? Or does international waters just mean they're having a fling while they're on the cruise? It's really not clear to me what the episode was doing. If this was the conclusion to Monty and Vanessa, it's underwhelming and insufficient. Clearly not what the show was building up to. But if this is just renewing the storyline, then that's cool. Great, simple reintroduction and no notes. My overall opinion on this episode really just depends on if future stories keep the ball rolling. because I'm not even sure what the state of Monty and Vanessa is after this episode. Also, Olivia Olson wrote this one, which means she got to tell the story of her own character's love life, and that's really funny to me. Notice how she chose to write about Monty instead of Ferb. Part 12, Agent P for Peak. In the early season 4 episode Happy Birthday Isabella, Stacy learned about Perry's secret identity after Doofenshmirtz's bug bus crashed into her house. Then it was strangely just never addressed again, outside of Stacy recognizing Monogram once. I felt like we were clearly owed an episode where Stacy helped Perry on a mission or something. And after all these years, we got exactly that. Agent T for Teen picks up immediately with Stacy and Perry hanging out, one of the rare fun episodes to not feature a Phineas and Ferb plot. We saw a glimpse of them hanging out earlier in the season, and it's adorable to me that they're just friends now.
To be honest, it's been a little awkward since I found out about your secret last summer.
This comment thread is gone now because the video was removed, but before Disney executed that animator for his reel, someone was giving me flack in the comments, and they were saying Agent T for Teen's not gonna be about Stacy, it's gonna be about Vanessa, because she was an Alka intern in the finale, and I was like, I don't think so, I doubt the show will care about that, a Stacy Perry team up makes way more sense, and they were like, no, it's gonna be about Vanessa. Hey dummy, guess what? I was right! You were wrong like a loser! It was about Stacy exactly as I predicted! We follow Stacy and Candace as they volunteer at Danville's Doctors and Scientists Symposium. Phineas and Ferb is the only show which would casually give Ming-Na Wen one singular line of dialogue. Meanwhile, Perry is assigned to track Doofenshmirtz at that very symposium. Doofenshmirtz runs into Dr. Diminutive, and the two of them decide to enter Love Muffin's tag and bag contest to trap Perry and get a prize. Stacy has to distract Candace.
Did you know that my boyfriend Coltrane is secretly on the Venezuelan Olympic luge team? Well, he isn't. Hey, look over there!
Coltrane's so funny to me because the network said, you have to make a character for Corbin Blue! And Dan and Swampy said, okay. Now what do we do with him? And then they did nothing. Stacy mentioning Coltrane is the most narrative importance he's had since 2009. I've noticed a very subtle shift in this season, where Stacy's now a little weirder than Candace, whereas in the past, Stacy was the straight man to Candace's antics.
You should hear my hiccuping dolphin.
Yeah, let's get back to it.
Perry gets trapped in Doofenshmirtz's blue car that he just has in this season. So Stacy has to hop on Perry's moped to pursue him to Love Muffin headquarters.
My name is Stacy Hirano. I know Perry's a secret agent, and he's been captured. I'm in pursuit now.
The show continues making amazingly stupid excuses as to why the other agents are not available to help.
All our other agents are being dewormed.
Oh, right. I forgot Agent W was missing. Looks like we picked a bad day to send all of our field agents to sensitivity training.
Monogram deems that Stacy is Agent P's only hope. Stacy uses her uncanny ability to make realistic animal noises, a skill she's famously always had, of course, prior to this episode, to terrify the scientists into thinking Alka's attacking. Could Stacy make the platypus chatter if she tried? She should try. She frees Perry, and the two of them fight side by side to take out the scientists. When I was really young, there was an episode called The Ballad of Batbeard, where Candace touched hallucinogenic tree moss and saw Perry's whole adventure. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if Candace could team up with Perry and help him out on his missions? I would have been 6 years old thinking that. Years later, that's kind of what's happening with Stacy. I've said it on this channel before, but Stacy is just Candace if she was Peak. Stacy is named an honorary agent, and we get several shots that go really hard, before leading into a reprise of Perry's theme dedicated to Stacy.
Stacy, Stacy Hirano.
Home run. This episode was everything it needed to be and more, focusing entirely on Stacy and Perry without wasting any time on the white noise that is Phineas and Ferb's invention. I would have loved this as a kid, but honestly, I think the 10-year wait made it more satisfying to finally see. This is probably my second favorite episode of the revival behind the Candace suit. Just a clear win and a shining example of the revival justifying its own existence. To circle back to the conversation about Stacy and Vanessa both knowing Perry's identity, I realized an important distinction is that Stacy may not realize Vanessa is Doofenshmirtz's daughter yet, and Vanessa doesn't know that Stacy knows about Perry. So imagine how fun it could be if they touched base. Imagine a story where Stacy's helping Perry fight Doofenshmirtz again for some reason, and Vanessa shows up to talk to her dad, and Stacy realizes, oh my god, Candace's close friend Vanessa is working with the evil scientist, and Stacy just assumes Vanessa's an evil agent of Doofenshmirtz. So I can imagine her like reporting this to Major Monogram and saying, sir, Doofenshmirtz's daughter has infiltrated the Flynn Fletcher host family. And then Alka like abducts Vanessa to mind wipe her, thinking Candace has been compromised. Like, imagine Stacy is the one to unknowingly dox the Monty-Vanessa relationship. Imagine if Stacy and Vanessa got upset at each other for Perry-related reasons, and Candace was like, why are my two best friends mad at each other? And neither of them would be able to tell her. Again, the show only does actual character drama through the lens of the Monty storyline. And the Fireside Girl episode shows the new season is comfortable having characters beef with each other. Obviously, Vanessa and Stacey would have to become friends by the end of the story. And I also think it could be so cool if they start having a friendship without Candace, because she is a leech. They're so much better off without her. And finally, that brings us to Meap Me in St. Louis, which didn't need to do anything in particular other than include this string of random scenes that were included in the trailer at the end of Meapless in Seattle. They did a decent job with Monty and Stacy's stories, so this should be a home run, right? Right? Part 13, Industrial Grade Meap Grinder. As soon as this revival was announced, I tweeted, "It's time for Meap Me in St. Louis." This was my live reaction after watching it. The opening few minutes of Meap Me in St. Louis are comparable to the opening minutes of Lab Rat's Elite Force, and that every 30 seconds something very wrong happens, leaving you with a rapidly growing, ominous sinking feeling of despair. First off, the episode draws attention to every time they include a clip. It doesn't annoy me as much as I've seen it annoy other internet commenters, but I don't enjoy it. They didn't need to do that during Meapless in Seattle. As a 10-year-old at the time, I was able to identify and recognize every clip from the first Meap trailer without having it slammed in my face. I can especially recognize the St. Louis ones after sitting with that trailer for 13 years. I don't need a reminder. It makes it a little less funny. We open with Meap on the run from the Alliance, some sort of space authority. Cool start. Then they blow up his ship. Cool start. And then he makes his noise. Meep, 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 meep. Bruh. Okay, so Lorenzo Lamas wasn't available to play Meap.
Oh, I meant Lorenzo. Oh, that's right. He played Meap.
He played Meap. He has been recast with John Stamos. But like, you couldn't have just paid Lorenzo Lamas a royalty to reuse the original Meap sound? The show did that in so many episodes.
Meap, did you bring us something fun to eat? Meap, Meap, yay! Meap carbonated goulash!
I am completely taken out of the story whenever I hear John Stamos' Meap noise, because this is not what I've been familiar with for 15 years. Even if there was some contractual hurdle to using Lorenzo Lamas' audio, which I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and assume there was, surely you could have hired a better sound-alike for just a little noise upon realizing John Stamos couldn't do it. We cut to Candace at Little Susie's Bangaroo-themed birthday party. Little Susie, mind you, hasn't shown up since season 3, and probably wouldn't have been in season 5 at all if the fake trailer hadn't obligated her to be in this episode. In the fake trailer, we saw Jerry the Platypus.
Jerry the Platypus?
In a fairly early episode of the series, Doof built an army of evil Perry clones to ruin Perry's reputation. Jerry was the Paper Jam Defect clone. So I was entertained by the question of how this character who got blown up and destroyed in his first and only appearance could possibly fit into this story.
Did I see Perry on the invite?
Oh, she invited Jerry the Platypus.
Jerry the Platypus?
Okay. The trailer ended up having 50% of his total screen time. Part of the fun of Meapless in Seattle is that they integrated the trailer clips in the most slap-in-the-face, misleading ways possible. Constant expectation subversion.
I want your hat on my desk. I want your hat on my desk. Because it rains a lot in Seattle and I'd like to spray it.
But here, Jerry just kind of shows up. There isn't even a joke. Why is he Candace's height? He's a platypus. A Perry-sized platypus. Did they forget who this character is? The original bit from the trailer is, ha! Wouldn't it be absurd if Jerry the Platypus came back? But Meap Me in St. Louis does nothing to expand on or transform the joke. The bit is still just, ha! Wouldn't it be absurd if Jerry the Platypus came back? We aren't given anything more than we were already given in 2012. This is the longest paragraph anyone's ever written about Jerry the Platypus. Then Meap shows up, and he needs Candace's help. I think it's adorable that Meap went to Candace first. I'd kind of forgotten that the first Meap episode is about the two of them teaming up, because they didn't really interact in the second episode, and it was always Phineas and Ferb who had a line of communication with Meap. Candace never had one. I like this approach a lot. But you know what I don't like?
Wait, how can I understand you without your mustache translator?
Oh, we got new translators. That's why I sound like John Stamos. Have mercy.
Part of the fun of the previous story was that they had to find contrived circumstances to make Meap lose and regain his mustache in order to match the shots from the trailer and give it to Mitch when he requires it, since they share a mustache. And then Meap would get new mustaches with new voices, like Jeff Foxworthy. Getting rid of the mustache translators is so lame, and to me feels incredibly lazy. Like they didn't want to bother with taking it off and putting it back on again. It's made even weirder because Mitch still has the mustache on his design. The logic's not consistent here. And Meap continues making his little Meap noise while talking to Candace for reasons I cannot discern. Meap, Meap, Meap.
We must hurry before the Alliance finds me.
Also, John Stamos' Meap voice is spot on. Of the three recasts, Ferb, Jeremy, and Meap, this is by far the closest match, and if you hadn't told me this wasn't Lorenzo Lamas, I might have not even noticed this. So the fact that they acknowledge this recast, but not two major characters, is really strange to me. In the first Meap episode, the trailer showed Meap fighting Susie. The second episode proceeded to only include this bit by putting it in the trailer for part 3.
Hey, wasn't that Susie stuff supposed to be in this one?
My assumption was that part 3 would once again put off the fight into the next trailer. But instead, here they draw attention to the fact that they're not doing it.
I don't think so, Short Stuff. I think you and I are about to have a giant Matrix-like battle in front of all these Bango-Root toys.
No, I'll do this.
Oh, guess we're not gonna fight.
Referencing the Matrix feels strange, because Phineas and Ferb has never acknowledged real-world franchises before. There isn't Lord of the Rings, there's Stumbleberry Finkbat. There isn't Star Trek, there's Space Adventure. I think that is the first time I've ever said Stumbleberry Finkbat out loud in my life. Anyways, just name-dropping The Matrix is incredibly offbeat and completely unprecedented in this franchise. Also, this character is like 5. Why would she name drop The Matrix? It's like they made a joke at the expense of the characterization. Mitch is hunting the lost treasure of Zachariah Yore, and to fund his expedition, he's hosting fake vacation tours to scam alien tourists out of their money. Meap has discovered the hidden treasure is on Earth. He wants to lure Mitch to Earth so he can catch him in the act of hunting the treasure to prove to the Alliance that Mitch is a bad guy. So Phineas and Ferb decide to create a 5th season called Stabby Barf Pain, which combines all the best elements of summer, spring, winter, and fall. This will turn Earth into the ultimate vacation destination to draw Mitch towards the planet. Very contrived premise. And everyone I watched this with was struggling to follow it at some points. The fact that an adult with a master's degree was asking me, wait, why is this happening? Multiple times in a 22-minute story points to some narrative issues, I think. Why would Mitch even be doing this? When he was introduced, he was a big game hunter. He was an extraterrestrial poacher of endangered species. Now he just generically wants to destroy stuff. It's like they completely lost the root of his character.
I'll use the money to create my own army to destroy the Alliance. Or maybe Earth first. I don't know the exact order, but there's going to be a lot of destroying.
Also, all of his robot drones talk now, which they never did in the past.
Intruder, identify yourself. We intercepted a signal from Earth.
Imagine if all of the Auka agents just started speaking fluently. Their silence was part of their charm, and I'm not a fan of them yapping in English.
And 2 more just like you will take your place. That's better.
The trailer for Meap Me in St. Louis depicted Meap walking away from his ship exploding behind him. And here's how the episode finally integrated that.
There, locked and armed.
Oh, that's the self-destruct button. The alarm is on the other side.
Okay, maybe we made 2 in case someone accidentally exploded it.
On paper, this is fine as a justification, but it's rubbing me the wrong way that Phineas and Ferb would install a self-destruct button, because multiple stories in the past have established that's something they find incredibly odd.
Everything's wired through this self-destruct button. Do you even need that?
You know, in retrospect, I question the inclusion of a self-destruct button in the first place.
Much like Susie referencing The Matrix, this feels like sacrificing a decades-established characterization to make the jokes from the trailer work. Phineas and Ferb spend almost the entire episode separated from Meap, using their stabby barf pain generator. First off, Swinter combined summer and winter. Fall combined summer and fall. I'm not sure how spring and summer would go together. So this combination of all 4 seasons seems to me like the spiritual successor and the logical conclusion of these ideas. But the episode doesn't seem to realize that. It doesn't bring it up at all.
And the song is called Stabby Barf Pain.
The biggest issue with the episode is Stabby Barf Pain, which feels like it should have been its own story. Imagine if half of Meapless in Seattle was dedicated to building Cheesetopia. Now over halfway through the episode, Mitch finally comes to Earth and releases his alien tourists. They randomly reuse old alien model sheets from the original show. But a lot of these guys were shown to have completely different personalities in the past. This character shouldn't be here. This wasn't an alien. This was a creature from an alternate dimension. But now the bathtub baby's screaming in an adult male voice, which is a surreal out-of-body experience. Skeleton weather, baby! Why are there 2 of this guy? Most of these are the kindly patrons of the Shooting Star Milkshake Bar, but now they're rioting looters for some reason. Oh yeah, they just start randomly destroying Danville. Let me get this straight. When these aliens get scammed by Mitch, they peacefully host an organized protest. But the moment they finally get exactly what they want, they feel compelled to start violently rioting? Why would this magical, beautiful, calming, perfect season spur these guys into violence? I've thrown around the word random a few times while talking about this episode, and that's because there is no coherent story progression. Things are just happening without cause and effect. Linda isn't in this episode at all, because they didn't feel like coming up with a fun explanation for her missing all of this going on. Phineas and Ferb have to stop the aliens from pillaging the city, so they sing a super catchy song called Do the Tidy Up, which was criminally snubbed from the album. Doofenshmirtz's subplot is basically an afterthought. He is trying to do things maniacally. I don't have any further elaboration, and neither does the episode.
I could just sing maniacally on a bus. I'm just a guy who's a sucker for the sounds of Mr. Zitz.
Why didn't they expand this into a whole musical number? That was the most obvious missed opportunity. Then that Doof story stops dead in its tracks when Balloony gets stolen by Mitch, prompting Perry and Doof to go on a paint-by-numbers rescue mission. Literally the exact plot we've already seen twice. Here in its most underwhelming iteration, because they don't even interact with Mitch whatsoever. Doofenshmirtz decides to try saving his friends maniacally, and defeats the robots. Okay.
Seriously, you had this the whole time? Why were we taking the bus? Oh, that's right, the trailer thing.
Oh, shut up! Candace and Meap sneak aboard Mitch's ship and lead him to St. Louis to find the treasure. This is the only joke in the episode that made me laugh. This is pretty good. This is pretty good. Having tracked Meap's signal, the Alliance arrives on Earth just in time to catch Mitch in the act. Meap had no way of knowing when they would arrive, and it's just sheer luck that they came before Mitch left with the treasure, because this whole plot is haphazardly held together by shoelaces and gum. Meap! Doesn't hit the same, does it? The alien tourists get bored and leave, and the Alliance takes the stabby barf pain generator away.
Remember that my mama is coming for dinner tonight.
Oh, so that's your wife.
How is that Meap's wife when this is his mother-in-law? What does the father-in-law look like? Meap gives a really cute speech to Candace, and I do like this part.
Maybe some good has come out of my busting obsession.
I don't think it's really a busting obsession. It's a justice obsession.
This episode leaning into Candace and Meap's dynamic is probably my favorite part about it. And it's also planting the seeds for her future profession as a lawyer, seen in the 10 Years Later episode. Meap talking about justice is rich though, because in this episode, as it's written, Meap is directly responsible for bringing cruel and dangerous alien tourists to Earth, using humanity as a pawn in his plan to bust Mitch. Mitch wasn't gonna find this treasure on his own, he was nowhere close. Look how concerned Phineas is about the damage these aliens are causing. Meap did this to you, brother. Is Gen Z trying to cancel Meap? Going into this episode, I think the main thing I was looking forward to was the fake trailer for the next episode. And ladies and gentlemen, here it is.
And now, a trailer for another episode we do not intend to make.
Wait, wasn't that Susie stuff supposed to be in this one? All right, I guess that's a victory.
Are you kidding me? What the hell was that? I don't understand why they wouldn't end it with a trailer. Even if it's like a 20-year wait until season 9, the wait's part of the fun. You can't just squeeze the Susie scenes into a fake trailer and have those be the only scenes in the fake trailer. That doesn't even make sense. The fact that this is the end of the Chronicles of Meap makes it even worse. Think about all the crazy buildings Meap could have kept standing on top of. Do you know how many buildings there are in New York? There's dozens. I've seen some people defending the episode by saying people let their expectations disappoint them. I promise you, I didn't have expectations. Never once in my life have I imagined what would happen in Meap Me in St. Louis. I think I just assumed it would be more of the same, but instead it seems to share shockingly little creative DNA with the first two. Phineas finding Isabella cute was like the main emotional hook of the first 2 episodes, and it was completely dropped. Phineas and Ferb barely interact with Meap. They didn't even go to space. This was my live commentary as I watched the episode for the first time. Meap Me in St. Louis is death by 1,000 paper cuts. Plus a shuriken through the skull for good measure. I can't believe an episode this bad came from a season this good. I feel vindicated in that it has not been well received. I don't think anyone's up in arms angry about it, but there's a clear consensus amongst all online commentary that this was a dud, and everyone I watched it with in person thought the same. I understand on paper the idea that the 3rd Meap episode is an alien invasion. Sure, that's cool, but everything about this is so strange, and I feel like an alien invasion deserved to be a bigger deal. It should have been the main plot, not just 3 minutes of runtime shoved in the cracks. Mitch should have just been coming to Earth on his own accord like he did the last 2 times. No need for this new stabby barf pain season which took up half the runtime. That could have been its own story as a spiritual successor to Swinturne's Fall. Mitch should have shown up like 4 or 5 minutes in, and maybe he could unleash all of his monsters on Earth. Anyone can collect an endangered species. What are there, 5 of each? But I'll be the first to collect a non-endangered species. And then Phineas and Ferb had to stop Mitch's alien monsters from collecting and imprisoning all of humanity. Soak up all the narrative opportunities that come with a full-fledged alien invasion. Have Linda be a part of the story and justify her somehow missing the entire thing, because that's fun. It genuinely feels like they gave up. Like they didn't even want to make this, but just had to get it over with. The writer of this episode, John Colton Berry, who also wrote the first 2, recently replied to a random fan's tweet saying his original idea for the episode was balls out insane, but it didn't fall in line with what Dan wanted. He said he's happy fans like the rest of the season though. Sort of a weird thing to tweet, but I think he just saw hundreds of people annoyed by the episode he wrote and wanted to clear the air and clear his name. Online, there's a bunch of insufferable goofballs who are begging on their hands and knees for Disney to redo the Star Wars sequel trilogy, to decanonize episodes 7 through 9 and produce new equivalents. And having watched Meap Me in St. Louis, I finally get it. In season 6, I think they should undo this one and then remake the episode so that it's actually good and call it Meap Me in St. Tui. They should reveal that what we thought was season 5 episode 9 was actually just a weather balloon. And with this clip I'm overlaying from Blackout/What I Miss, I have officially included footage from every single episode of Phineas and Ferb in this video. Every 22 minute, not every 11 minute. I'm not that ambitious. Part 15, Legacy. There will be no part 14 for reasons out of my control. I was curious the other day if the current generation of kids are watching Phineas and Ferb, or if it's just my generation of young adults who grew up with it and are tuning back in. So I asked my nephew, who just graduated 6th grade, and he told me that a few kids in his class were singing the Phineas and Ferb theme song on the last days of school. Unfortunately, he also told me they were the weird kids that no one likes. And that's a shame, because as we all know, only cool people are allowed to enjoy Phineas and Ferb. I know I spent a lot of this video discussing smaller details, but Phineas and Ferb is a show made by its small details. Every episode has the same story structure. When you told your friends at school about last night's episode, you didn't tell them about the plot, you told them about the plot devices. You don't tell your friend, Candace tried to bust her brothers to her mom! No, you say Doofenshmirtz built a deviant Artonator. As the dust settled over the last month of thinking about season 5, my overall thoughts on this season trend really positively. While I went into this 5th season not really yearning for it, I came away remarkably impressed and entertained, even despite the hesitations and reservations I've expressed in this video. I'm happy to see these characters again, and even more grateful to see them firing on all cylinders, giving the original 4 seasons a run for their money in terms of charm, humor, and creativity. At the time of uploading this, there are still 60 more 11-minute segments set to air between season 5 and 6. Almost everything I'd want from a revival has already happened. So I guess my only hope is maybe we see more returning characters like Rodney, Charlene. One of my favorite things the old show used to do is have random episodes that would take place the same day as other episodes.
What happened earlier today?
I tried to show you a giant ant farm.
The episode Giants had aired 7 months before When Worlds Collide. What a random thing to harken back to. I think it'd be great if we get some episode later in season 5 where Phineas is like, remember earlier today when we made a giant pogo stick? It's been a really long time since the show has explored how Perry genuinely cares deeply about Phineas and Ferb, and I think we're due for a story like that. Maybe Doofenshmirtz builds a popularity swapinator to switch minds with the most popular person in Danville to use their clout, only to end up switching minds with Phineas. And then Perry's too emotionally compromised to fight him or something, as Doofenshmirtz in Phineas's body rallies all the children of the tri-state area to instill him as leader. I don't know. Isabella could be the only one who senses that something's wrong and that Phineas is acting differently. And Buford's just like, sure, Phineas, we'll help with your coup. I've noticed that all 4 seasons had an episode with the word bully in the title. Raging Bully, The Bully Code, Bully Bromance Breakup, and Bully Bust. If season 5 and 6 don't each have an episode with bully in the title, I will retract every positive thing I said about the season, and I will be angry. If you want more discussion of this triangular little fucker, the aforementioned Jonathan has released a video about season 5, and the genuine super fans at Musical Without a Cool Acronym have spirited podcast discussions of every episode. Join me in my next video as I meticulously dissect the incredible marketing failure of the Phineas and Ferb ice cream truck. All we have to do is follow the truck.